You think Thanksgiving in the 1960s meant fancy spreads? Think again. Working families created holiday feasts from cheap ingredients that tasted like pure celebration. Here are 30 cheap Thanksgiving dishes that 1960s kids begged for every year. Giblet gravy turned what butchers nearly threw away into liquid gold that made everything taste better. The neck, heart, liver, and gizzard came free inside the turkey cavity, already paid for, but often ignored by fancy cooks. Mothers simmered these organs slowly in water with onions, celery, and pepper until the meat fell apart and the broth turned rich and brown. The giblets were chopped fine and stirred into gravy thickened with flour and pan drippings. This provided iron and protein in every spoonful while costing absolutely nothing extra. Children sopped it up with bread, poured it over potatoes, and begged for extra on their turkey. The smell of giblet gravy simmering on Thanksgiving morning meant the holiday had officially begun, filling homes with the promise of feast. Today's instant gravies can't match the depth that came from using every part of the bird with care. Candied sweet potatoes made from a single can became the dish children fought over at every table. A 29-cent can of sweet potatoes was sliced into rounds, layered in butter, then covered with brown sugar and cinnamon before baking until edges caramelized into sticky sweetness. Families stretched one can to feed 8 by slicing thin and arranging carefully. The result tasted like dessert, but counted as vegetables, satisfying mothers who wanted nutrition and children who craved sugar. Some added mini marshmallows on top during the last minutes, creating a golden crust that crackled when you broke through with your fork. The dish was so popular that seconds disappeared before first servings reached everyone. Sweet potatoes were cheaper than white potatoes and provided vitamins that Depression-era mothers remembered as essential. This was the taste of celebration that made Thanksgiving special even when money was desperately tight. Cranberry sauce from a can shaped like a cylinder became the one store-bought item families served with pride instead of shame. A single 19-cent can of Ocean Spray jellied cranberry sauce provided enough tart sweetness for an entire table when sliced into perfect rounds. Children loved how it held its shape from the can, creating ridged slices that wobbled on the plate like something magical. The sweet tart flavor cut through richness of turkey and gravy, providing brightness that homemade versions struggled to match at this price. Mothers didn't apologize for serving it straight from the can, because everyone secretly preferred this version to complicated cranberry relishes costing 3 times as much to make. Some families got fancy by mixing it with chopped apples, but most served those perfect ridged slices exactly as they emerged from the can. This was one of the few convenience foods that working families embraced without guilt. Stuffing made from day-old bread transformed what bakeries sold for pennies into the most fought-over dish on the table. Mothers saved bread heels and stale slices throughout November, letting them dry on counters until ready to be cubed and baked into something magnificent. The bread was torn into chunks, mixed with sautéed onions and celery cooked in butter, seasoned with sage and thyme, then moistened with turkey broth until saturated with flavor. Some families added chopped apples for sweetness, while others mixed in sausage when budget allowed extra protein. The stuffing was packed into the turkey cavity where it soaked up drippings or baked separately when the bird was too small. Children hovered near the stove, waiting for edges to get crispy and golden, sneaking pieces before dinner was served. This turned waste into treasure, proving cheapest ingredients could become most beloved when treated with care and seasoning. Green bean casserole made with canned beans and canned soup became the vegetable dish that actually disappeared from serving bowls. 2 cans of green beans at 15 cents each were drained and mixed with 1 can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup for 19 cents, topped with French's fried onions for 39 cents, creating a complete side for under $1. The casserole assembled in minutes, requiring no chopping beyond opening cans and stirring everything together in a baking dish. When it emerged from the oven, creamy mushroom sauce bubbled around tender beans, while fried onions turned crispy and golden. This made children actually eat vegetables without complaint, proof that canned ingredients could create something genuinely delicious. The recipe came from the back of the soup can, meaning every family made it exactly the same way, creating a shared experience across Thanksgiving tables nationwide. Mashed potatoes stretched with milk and margarine fed entire extended families from a single 5-pound bag, costing 39 cents. The potatoes were peeled, boiled until tender, then mashed with whatever dairy was available, usually cheap margarine and reconstituted powdered milk that cost almost nothing. Mothers whipped the potatoes with electric beaters, adding extra milk to increase volume until the bowl looked like it could feed a small army. The result was fluffy and mild, the perfect canvas for soaking up giblet gravy and turkey drippings. Children created wells in their potatoes, specifically designed to hold as much gravy as possible without spilling onto the rest of the plate. Some families added cream cheese when someone brought it as a contribution, elevating the dish into something almost luxurious. These weren't gourmet potatoes, but they were reliable, filling, and cheap enough that seconds and thirds were always encouraged throughout the meal. Dinner rolls from frozen dough made Thanksgiving tables look abundant while costing less than homemade versions. A package of frozen Rhodes rolls for 49 cents contained 24 pieces of dough that rose while families were at church or preparing other dishes. The rolls were placed in greased pans, covered with towels, and left to proof until doubled in size, filling kitchens with yeasty smell of fresh bread. When baked, they turned golden with soft, pillowy interiors that pulled apart in steaming sections. Children slathered them with margarine while still too hot to touch, burning fingers but unable to wait for butter to melt. These rolls made tables look generous and festive, like families had spent hours baking when the truth was far simpler and cheaper. Mothers could focus energy on turkey and sides while rolls handled themselves with minimal supervision, soaking up gravy and wiping plates clean. Waldorf salad made with apples, celery, and mayonnaise brought crunch and freshness to heavy Thanksgiving plates for less than 50 cents. 2 apples chopped into small cubes were mixed with diced celery, raisins, and chopped walnuts when budget allowed, all bound together with mayonnaise and lemon juice. The salad was assembled in the morning and refrigerated until dinner, allowing flavors to meld and apples to absorb creamy dressing. This wasn't a main dish, but it provided textural contrast that made rich foods more bearable, cutting through gravy and butter with crisp apple and tangy dressing. Children initially protested salad on Thanksgiving, but sweetness of apples and raisins usually won them over after a reluctant first bite. Mothers appreciated how the dish added color to the table and used up apples that were starting to soften, but weren't bad enough to throw away. Corn pudding made from canned corn and pantry staples became the unexpected favorite that children requested by name. 2 cans of creamed corn at 18 cents each were mixed with eggs, milk, flour, sugar, and melted margarine, then baked until set like custard with golden brown edges. The pudding was sweet enough to almost count as dessert, but savory enough to belong on the dinner plate, occupying a strange middle ground that made it endlessly appealing. The texture was soft and spoonable, requiring no chewing that might slow down children eager to move on to pie. Some families added crumbled crackers or cornbread on top for crunch, creating layers of texture that made each bite interesting. Mothers loved this dish because it was impossible to mess up and could be assembled hours ahead, reducing stress during the final cooking rush. The sweetness came from the corn itself, meaning very little sugar was needed. Deviled eggs, made from a dozen eggs at 49 cents, became the appetizer that disappeared before the turkey was even carved. Hard-boiled eggs were halved, the yolks mashed with mayonnaise, mustard, and paprika, then spooned back into white halves, creating perfect little bites. These weren't fancy deviled eggs with capers or garnishes, just simple combinations of yolk, mayo, and tang that tasted perfect and festive. Children would sneak them off the platter while mothers were busy with final preparations, earning scoldings but rarely actual consequences because everyone understood their appeal. The eggs provided protein that kept children satisfied while waiting for dinner, preventing meltdowns from hunger and anticipation. Mothers made extra because they knew half would disappear before the meal started, planning for this theft as part of holiday tradition. The paprika on top made them look special and colorful, transforming cheap eggs into something appropriate for celebration. Pumpkin pie, made from a 29-cent can of Libby's pumpkin filling, became the dessert that defined Thanksgiving for an entire generation of children. The filling was mixed with evaporated milk, eggs, sugar, and pumpkin pie spice, then poured into a store-bought pie crust and baked until set. The result was smooth, spiced, and sweet, with that distinctive canned pumpkin flavor that everyone recognized as the taste of the holiday. Mothers could make 2 pies from a single can when they rolled the crust thin and didn't overfill, stretching dessert to feed a crowd. Children would fight over who got the slice with the most whipped topping, which was usually Cool Whip from a tub rather than fresh whipped cream. The pie was served barely warm, cut into thin slices that somehow still satisfied despite their size. This wasn't fancy French pastry, but it was the taste of tradition that made Thanksgiving feel complete and familiar year after year. Ambrosia salad made with canned fruit and coconut brought tropical sweetness to Thanksgiving tables for under $1 total. Canned mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, and maraschino cherries were drained and mixed with miniature marshmallows, shredded coconut, and sour cream or Cool Whip, creating something between salad and dessert. The mixture was refrigerated overnight, allowing marshmallows to soften and flavors to blend into sticky, sweet perfection. Children loved how it was basically candy disguised as a side dish, while mothers appreciated how it added color and variety to heavy brown dinner plates. The salad appeared at every Thanksgiving and Christmas, becoming so traditional that its absence would have been noticed and questioned. Some families added chopped pecans or walnuts when the budget allowed, but the base recipe worked perfectly fine with just fruit, coconut, and cream. This dish represented economy and festivity combined, turning cheap canned fruit into something special. Turkey soup made from the picked-over carcass became Friday's meal that somehow tasted better than Thursday's feast. After Thanksgiving dinner, mothers would boil the turkey bones with onions, celery, and carrots, extracting every last bit of flavor and meat from the frame. The resulting broth was rich and golden, filled with shreds of turkey meat picked from the bones and whatever vegetables were still crisp in the refrigerator. Noodles or rice stretched the soup to feed the family for multiple meals, proving that the turkey's value extended far beyond the initial dinner. Children who claimed to be tired of turkey on Thursday would mysteriously find their appetites when the soup appeared on Friday. The soup meant the holiday wasn't quite over, that there was still warmth and comfort to be extracted from what others might have thrown away. This was Depression-era wisdom that families in the 1960s still practiced, understanding that waste was sin. Jell-O salad with shredded carrots became the dish that confused and delighted children in equal measure. A package of orange or lemon Jell-O for 10 cents was mixed according to directions, then refrigerated until partially set before folding in shredded carrots and sometimes crushed pineapple. The result was sweet, jiggly, and vaguely vegetable-like, occupying a strange space between side dish and dessert. Children loved the wobble and sweetness, but remained suspicious of the carrot shreds suspended in translucent gelatin. Mothers served it with pride, knowing they were sneaking vegetables into a form that children would actually eat without complaint. The salad was often molded into festive shapes using bundt pans or decorative molds, then unmolded onto lettuce leaves for presentation. This was the height of 1960s culinary sophistication, representing modernity and convenience that made housewives feel like they were keeping up with the times. Buttered noodles made from a 25-cent package of egg noodles became the side dish that picky children could actually eat. The noodles were boiled until tender, drained, then tossed with margarine and a sprinkle of salt and pepper, creating something mild enough not to offend sensitive palates. This wasn't fancy pasta, but it absorbed gravy beautifully and provided carbohydrates that kept children full when they refused to eat vegetables. Mothers appreciated how quickly noodles cooked and how they never caused dinner table battles like green beans or Brussels sprouts. Some families added a bit of chicken broth to the butter for extra flavor, while others kept them completely plain. The noodles were reliable, cheap, and universally acceptable, making them essential insurance against picky eater meltdowns. Children would pile their plates high with buttered noodles, creating safe bases for small amounts of turkey and gravy that they could control and manage without adult intervention. Oyster stew, served in coffee cups, became the fancy first course that cost less than $2 to feed 8 people. A pint of fresh oysters for $1.29 was heated gently in milk with butter, salt, and pepper, creating a simple soup that tasted surprisingly elegant. The oysters were added at the last minute to prevent toughening, floating in creamy broth with their liquid adding oceanic depth. Children were divided on oyster stew, some loving the richness while others rejected the texture entirely, but its presence on the table signaled that this was a special meal. Fathers often claimed oyster stew as their territory, taking pride in heating the milk to exactly the right temperature and adding oysters at precisely the right moment. The stew was served in china cups or fancy mugs, making even children feel sophisticated and grown up. This was the one dish that made working families feel like they were dining in restaurants despite eating at home. Pickled beets from a jar added bright color and vinegary tang to plates dominated by brown gravy and beige foods. A 39-cent jar of sliced pickled beets provided enough servings for an entire table, requiring absolutely no preparation beyond opening the jar and arranging slices on a plate. Children either loved them intensely or refused to let them touch anything else on their plates, creating clear family divisions. Mothers appreciated how the beets added vitamins and color without requiring any cooking time or attention during the busy meal preparation. The vinegar cut through richness of turkey and gravy, providing palate-cleansing brightness between bites. Some families drained the beets and mixed them with sliced onions for extra flavor, while others served them straight from the jar. The magenta juice would inevitably stain everything it touched, creating pink pools on plates that mixed alarmingly with gravy, but somehow still tasted good together. Celery sticks filled with cream cheese became the vegetable that children would actually eat without being forced. Celery cost almost nothing, and an 8-ounce package of cream cheese for 35 cents could fill dozens of stalks. The celery was washed, trimmed, and cut into 3-inch pieces. Then the natural groove was filled with softened cream cheese. Some mothers added paprika on top for color, while others mixed the cream cheese with chopped olives or pimentos for adult versions. Children loved how they could pick up the celery with their fingers and eat it like breadsticks, making vegetables feel like finger food rather than forced nutrition. The cream cheese provided protein and fat that made the celery actually filling rather than just crunchy water. These appeared on relish trays alongside pickles and olives, adding freshness and color to the table while costing pennies. The combination represented clever marketing to children, disguising vegetables as treats. Apple cider bought by the gallon jug became the beverage that made water feel festive and special. A gallon of cider for 79 cents provided drinks for the entire day, served cold before dinner, and heated with cinnamon sticks for evening dessert. The cider tasted like autumn itself, sweet and slightly tangy, with flavors that complemented turkey and pie perfectly. Children could drink unlimited amounts without mothers worrying about sugar the way they did with soda, making it the rare treat that came without restrictions or guilt. Some families added cinnamon sticks and whole cloves when heating it, filling homes with spice scents that made everything smell like celebration. The cider bridged the gap between adult beverages and childhood drinks, sophisticated enough for grown-ups but sweet enough for children. This was economy and festivity combined, turning apple juice into something that felt appropriate for special occasions without requiring champagne budgets or cocktail skills. Baked acorn squash halves filled with butter and brown sugar became the vegetable that tasted like dessert and tricked children into nutrition. 2 squash for 50 cents were halved, seeds scooped out, and each cavity filled with a pat of margarine and spoonful of brown sugar before baking. The squash flesh softened until spoonable, while the sugar melted into caramel that pooled in the center. Children would scrape out the sweet, tender squash, leaving the skin behind like empty boats. This was economical cooking that turned winter squash into something that rivaled pie for sweetness and appeal. Mothers loved how the dish required minimal preparation and could bake alongside the turkey, saving time and oven space. The squash provided vitamins and fiber that children would never have accepted in savory preparations, proving that a little sugar could make anything palatable. The golden color and caramelized edges made plates look abundant and colorful. Biscuits made from biscuit mix became the bread that required zero skill but delivered maximum comfort. A box of biscuit for 49 cents could make dozens of biscuits following the simple recipe printed on the side. The mix was stirred with milk until just combined, dropped by spoonfuls onto baking sheets, then baked until golden brown with flaky layers. These weren't fancy buttermilk biscuits requiring technique and cold butter, but they were reliable, fast, and genuinely tasty. Children would split them open while steaming hot, stuffing them with butter and honey, or using them to soak up every drop of gravy left on their plates. Mothers appreciated how the mix eliminated the possibility of failure, ensuring that even stressed, distracted holiday cooks could produce decent bread. The biscuits represented modernity and convenience that freed women from baking anxiety, allowing them to focus energy on dishes that actually required skill and attention to detail for success. Macaroni and cheese made from 3 boxes of Kraft Dinner became the backup plan that saved Thanksgiving when picky children refused everything else. 3 boxes at 19 cents each provided enough cheesy pasta to feed a table of children who rejected turkey, vegetables, and anything that looked unfamiliar. The macaroni was boiled, drained, then mixed with margarine, milk, and the powdered cheese packets that turned everything bright orange. This wasn't traditional Thanksgiving food, but it was insurance against dinner table battles and hunger strikes from children overwhelmed by unusual foods. Mothers would make a large pot and keep it warm on the stove, offering it quietly to children who were melting down over textures and flavors. The familiar orange glow meant safety and predictability in a meal full of strange dishes and strong flavors. This was wisdom learned through experience, understanding that sometimes peace mattered more than tradition or forcing children to eat holiday foods. Carrot and raisin salad made with shredded carrots and mayonnaise brought sweetness and crunch to the table for about 40 cents total. 2 large carrots were peeled and shredded, then mixed with raisins, a squeeze of lemon juice, and enough mayonnaise to bind everything together into sweet, crunchy salad. Some families added crushed pineapple or chopped apples to increase volume and sweetness, making the salad more dessert-like. Children who refused cooked carrots would sometimes accept this version, seduced by raisins and creamy dressing that disguised the vegetable flavor. Mothers appreciated how the salad required no cooking and could be assembled early in the day, sitting safely in the refrigerator while other dishes demanded oven space and attention. The bright orange color added visual appeal to plates dominated by brown and beige, making meals look more balanced and abundant than they actually were. This was clever vegetable marketing disguised as sweet salad. Mincemeat pie, made from a jar of filling, represented tradition and thrift combined in 9-inch pastry. A jar of prepared mincemeat for 59 cents was poured into a pie crust and baked until bubbling, creating a dense, spiced dessert that tasted like concentrated Christmas. The filling was dark and mysterious, packed with dried fruits, spices, and sometimes a hint of brandy that made it feel sophisticated and adult. Children often rejected mincemeat pie entirely, leaving more for grown-ups who remembered it from their own childhoods. The pie kept well and actually improved after a day or two, making it perfect for Thanksgiving when desserts needed to be prepared ahead. Some families served it with hard sauce or vanilla ice cream, but most ate it plain with coffee after the dishes were cleared. This wasn't the most popular pie on the table, but its presence signaled tradition and connection to previous generations who had made these same choices. Creamed onions made from a bag of frozen pearl onions became the vegetable that adults loved and children despised with equal passion. A 16-ounce bag for 29 cents was boiled until tender, then dressed in white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. The sauce was enriched with a bit of cream when available, creating something that coated the onions in velvety richness. Adults appreciated the mild, sweet flavor of pearl onions, softened by cooking and cream, while children gagged at the texture and taste. The dish represented sophisticated adult palates that children aspired to appreciate someday, understanding that creamed onions were a marker of grown-up status. Mothers served them knowing children would refuse, but adults would scrape the dish clean. This was one of those dishes that divided tables along age lines, creating clear demarcations between childhood and adult food preferences that everyone recognized and accepted. Nut cups filled with mixed nuts became the pre-dinner snack that kept children occupied while adults finished cooking. A can of mixed nuts for 79 cents was divided into small bowls placed around the living room where children and adults gathered before dinner. The nuts provided protein and fat that prevented hunger meltdowns during the long wait between arrival and actual meal service. Children would carefully sort through looking for cashews and avoiding Brazil nuts, creating little piles on napkins while adults caught up on family news. Fathers would crack walnuts with nutcrackers, performing small demonstrations of strength while children watched in fascination. The nuts made people feel fancy and sophisticated, like they were hosting cocktail parties rather than just feeding family. This was one of those small touches that elevated the meal from ordinary to special, signaling that this day was different from regular Sundays when nuts weren't offered before dinner. Lime Jell-O with cottage cheese became the salad that confused everyone but somehow kept appearing year after year. A package of lime Jell-O was mixed with cottage cheese and sometimes crushed pineapple, creating a lumpy, jiggly green mass that looked distinctly unappetizing. The combination of sweet gelatin and tangy cottage cheese created flavor confusion that divided families, with some members defending it passionately while others refused to let it touch their plates. Mothers who served it claimed it was traditional, passed down from their mothers who had found the recipe in magazines during the 1950s. The salad represented a specific era of American cooking when Jell-O was considered sophisticated and cottage cheese was diet food, combining them into something that seemed modern and health-conscious. Children universally rejected it, staring in horror at the wobbly green squares with visible cheese curds suspended throughout. This was one tradition that probably should have been forgotten. Dinner mints from a bag became the tiny candy that signaled the meal's transition from dinner to dessert. A bag of pastel buttermints for 39 cents was poured into small glass dishes and placed around the table after dinner plates were cleared. The mints melted on the tongue, providing a moment of sweetness and freshness that cleansed palates before pie was served. Children would sneak handfuls when adults weren't looking, stuffing pockets with the soft candies that would later be discovered as sticky messes during laundry. The mints represented elegance and sophistication on a budget, making ordinary family dinners feel like restaurant experiences. Adults would take one or two politely, while children calculated how many they could grab without getting caught or scolded. The pastel colors added visual appeal to tables, making everything look coordinated and intentional, even when the meal had been chaotic and stressful. This was economy disguised as luxury. Cranberry orange relish made from fresh cranberries and oranges represented the one truly homemade side dish that required actual effort. A bag of fresh cranberries for 39 cents and one orange were ground together in a meat grinder with sugar, creating a bright red relish that was both tart and sweet. The texture was chunky and fresh, completely different from canned cranberry sauce that dominated most tables. This relish was labor-intensive, requiring someone to feed cranberries and orange pieces through the grinder while catching the mixture in a bowl below. Children generally preferred the canned version, but adults appreciated the complexity and freshness of homemade relish that tasted like actual fruit rather than sweetened gel. The relish represented tradition and effort, showing that the cook had invested time and energy into making something special rather than just opening cans. Some families made it days ahead, allowing the flavors to meld and mellow in the refrigerator. Turkey sandwiches made with white bread and mayonnaise became the prize that everyone fought over on Friday morning after Thanksgiving. Leftover turkey was sliced thin and piled on soft white bread with generous amounts of mayonnaise, creating sandwiches that somehow tasted better than the original dinner. The cold turkey had time to absorb seasoning and develop flavor, while the simple bread and mayo allowed the meat to shine without competition from gravy or sides. Children would wake up early and make these sandwiches before adults claimed all the best turkey pieces, understanding that white meat disappeared fast while dark meat lingered. Some families added lettuce and tomato, while purists insisted that only bread, meat, and mayo were acceptable. These sandwiches represented the extended holiday, proving that Thanksgiving wasn't just one meal, but days of eating and celebration that continued long after guests had gone home and dishes were washed and put away. Saving turkey drippings for everything was one of those old-fashioned habits Grandma refused to give up, and the truth was that every dish on the table tasted better because of it. After the turkey finished roasting and she transferred it to the carving board, she would tilt the pan and pour every last bit of liquid gold into a jar or small bowl, letting the fat rise to the top. She knew exactly how to use it, spooning the fat into her cast iron skillet to flavor vegetables, potatoes, or stuffing with that unmistakable richness that no bottled seasoning could ever imitate. The darker juices beneath the fat became the base for her gravy, deepening the flavor in ways only slow-roasted drippings could. She used them to moisten leftover turkey the next day, keeping it tender and soft instead of letting it dry out. She even saved some for future meals, adding a teaspoon here and there to soups or casseroles in the weeks that followed, stretching the flavor of Thanksgiving long after the holiday ended. No part of that turkey went to waste, not while Grandma was in charge. The drippings were her secret ingredient, the hidden thread that tied every dish together. It was one more sign of her resourcefulness, her skill, and her belief that good food should never be thrown away. Using those drippings was not just practical. It was tradition, memory, and pride simmered into every bite. It was one of the many reasons her Thanksgiving tasted perfect every single year. Grape salad with sour cream and brown sugar was the cool, unexpected elegance of a Midwest Thanksgiving. It appeared in the 1950s and 1960s when homemakers began experimenting with recipes that required no baking yet still dazzled at the table. Green and red grapes were washed, dried, and tossed in thick, tangy sour cream. A generous sprinkle of brown sugar melted slowly over the top, forming a delicate caramel-like crust as it chilled in the refrigerator. Sometimes crushed pecans or walnuts were added for a touch of crunch. Served in cut glass bowls, it shimmered like a dessert and tasted like one too. Sweet, tart, and creamy all at once. It was the kind of dish that made guests pause mid-bite, surprised at how something so simple could taste so rich. It brought freshness to a meal often dominated by heaviness, a bright counterpoint to gravy and stuffing. For many, it was the first salad they ever truly loved. It fit perfectly into the era's fascination with sweet, savory blends and convenience cooking, beautiful without effort. Over the decades, it disappeared from most holiday tables, outshined by trendier desserts. Yet for those who remember, one spoonful of grape salad is enough to recall the laughter of long tables, clinking glasses, and the sweet ease of family gathered close. Spiced pear bread pudding was the kind of dessert that made old recipes feel new again. It began with cubes of stale bread, soaked in milk and eggs until soft, then baked with slices of canned pears, cinnamon, and nutmeg. The pears melted into the pudding, their syrup seeping through every layer to create sweetness that felt natural and deep. Served warm with a drizzle of cream, it tasted like comfort you could hold. It was a dish that made use of leftovers and turned them into something extraordinary. A 1970s virtue wrapped in flavor. Families made it after holidays when the pantry was full of odds and ends, proving again that thrift could still be beautiful. Each spoonful carried the softness of pear, the spice of memory, and the weight of tradition. Spiced pear pudding was not glamorous, but it had heart. It was the taste of home, gently reborn in every bite. Baked rice with raisins and cinnamon was comfort dressed in sweetness, a dish born from thrift and transformed by love. The rice simmered slowly in milk and sugar, soaking up every bit of warmth until it turned soft and creamy. Butter melted in last, followed by a handful of golden raisins that plumped in the heat. A dusting of cinnamon crowned it, turning the air rich with spice and memory. Some families baked it until the top browned slightly, others served it straight from the pot, steaming and fragrant. Each spoonful carried both sweetness and substance, a perfect bridge between side and dessert. The raisins added brightness, the cinnamon gave warmth, and together they turned humble rice into something celebratory. It was a dish found in immigrant homes across America, bringing together old traditions and new beginnings. Served warm beside roasts or cool the next morning with milk, it never lost its quiet charm. Baked rice with raisins and cinnamon was a recipe of heart and heritage, simple, tender, and timeless. cranberry sauce cooked on the stove was one of the most quietly powerful things Grandma made because it proved how a simple handful of berries could become something meaningful with just a little time and patience. She would pour the cranberries into a pot, listening to the soft rattle as they hit the bottom, then add sugar and water in amounts she never bothered measuring. As the pot warmed, the berries burst open one by one with tiny pops that sounded like miniature fireworks, filling the kitchen with a sweet, tart aroma that wrapped itself around everyone who walked by. She stirred slowly, watching the mixture thicken into a deep red sauce that shimmered under the kitchen light. It was never too sweet, never too sour, always balanced in that way only Grandma could manage. Even when there was a canned version sitting in the pantry, she insisted on making it from scratch because she believed some parts of Thanksgiving needed a human touch to matter. When she spooned it into the serving bowl, it looked like a jewel next to everything else on the table, bright and festive without trying too hard. Kids who swore they hated cranberries would sneak tastes, discovering that Grandma's version was nothing like the canned jelly they had seen elsewhere. It paired perfectly with turkey, dressing, and rolls, bringing all the flavors into harmony. That simple pot of berries showed how Grandma turned even the smallest tasks into something beautiful, making Thanksgiving perfect not with extravagance, but with intention. Jellied cranberry rings were Thanksgiving's edible art. Homemade cranberry sauce was poured into molds, chilled, and turned out in perfect circles to adorn the holiday spread. The jewel-red rings shimmered beside the turkey, adding color and ceremony to the table. In the mid-century, when presentation was everything, this dish embodied the era's aesthetic pride. Housewives competed to perfect the shape, the smoothness, the glossy finish. The flavor was tart, bright, and just sweet enough to balance the meal. Over time, convenience cans replaced molds and the artistry disappeared. But in those who remember, the memory still glows. The wobble, the shine, the first perfect slice. Jellied cranberry rings were edible nostalgia, a reminder that beauty once had a place at every meal. Cherry lemon ribbon cake was sunshine layered in frosting. Bright pink and yellow stripes stacked high, each slice revealing cheerful colors that mirrored the optimism of the decade. The lemon layers were light and tangy, the cherry ones sweet and whimsical. Together they created a dessert that looked like happiness cut into squares. Whipped frosting covered the top, smooth as satin and often sprinkled with coconut flakes or candied cherries for flair. It was the kind of cake you saw in holiday cookbooks, a showpiece that looked fancier than it was. The secret was in the color. Food dye and imagination turned an ordinary cake mix into a holiday memory. It was baked for birthdays, Christmas dinners, and any occasion worth a little brightness. Each bite carried a taste of citrus and nostalgia, sweetened by the laughter of guests admiring its colors. Cherry lemon ribbon cake was a dessert of joy, lighthearted, eye-catching, and exactly what the 1970s loved most: fun made edible. Giblet gravy was the heartbeat of Southern Christmas dinners, a sauce so rich and storied it could tie an entire feast together. The giblets, the heart, liver, and neck, were simmered slowly with celery, onion, and seasoned broth until they surrendered every bit of flavor. Once tender, they were chopped fine and folded into a roux made from flour and the drippings of the holiday roast. The mixture thickened into a glossy, golden brown gravy that filled the kitchen with a scent like celebration itself. When ladled over turkey, dressing, and mashed potatoes, it transformed the meal into something whole. The taste was deep, smoky, and unmistakably homemade, each bite carrying a trace of memory and patience. No jar or packet could ever come close. Families guarded their versions, written on stained index cards or held in their heads, passed quietly from grandmother to daughter to granddaughter. Some added boiled eggs, others a splash of cream, but all agreed that it made the plate complete. Giblet gravy was more than food. It was history in motion, poured warm over tradition and served with love. Celery and olive relish trays were once the quiet opening act of every Thanksgiving feast. Before the turkey, before the sides, came the cool crunch of celery stuffed with pimento cheese or cream cheese and the briny bite of olives. They offered a balance, freshness before the richness to come. Housewives prided themselves on arranging them neatly, often on cut glass trays. Children would sneak olives off the plate, pretending not to like them but always coming back for more. It was a simple tradition, but one that marked the beginning of the meal with grace and order. Over time, the relish tray faded, replaced by charcuterie boards and modern appetizers. Yet it remains a symbol of hospitality from a slower, more deliberate age. Celery and olive relish trays were Thanksgiving's crisp, elegant overture. Chocolate peppermint roll was the showstopper of every holiday dessert table. A light sponge cake baked flat and rolled with a creamy peppermint filling, it looked like something from a glossy 1970s magazine ad. The swirl inside revealed its story, a perfect balance of rich chocolate and cool mint, made to impress, but easy to love. The aroma filled kitchens with festive warmth, the kind that made people linger just a little longer near the oven. Cooks dusted the top with powdered sugar or drizzled thin ribbons of chocolate glaze for that final elegant touch. It was the dessert that made guests pause before cutting, admiring the spiral as if it were art. Making it was a test of care. The cake had to be rolled while warm, the filling spread with confidence. When sliced, it held its shape beautifully, soft, light, and filled with joy. For homemakers of the 70s, it was proof that creativity and precision could coexist. Served chilled, it was as refreshing as it was decadent. One bite felt like winter wrapped in sweetness, cool, rich, and entirely unforgettable. Sweet corn soufflé was a cloud baked golden, a dish that seemed to float straight from the oven to the table. The batter began with creamed corn and butter, thickened slightly, and then folded with whipped egg whites until it shimmered like silk. When it baked, it rose tall and trembling, the edges crisping gently while the center stayed soft and full of steam. The smell was warm and sweet, a perfume of corn and cream that filled the kitchen like a promise. Each spoonful melted instantly, light, buttery, and faintly sweet, carrying the taste of summer harvest into winter. It was a dish that required timing and trust, fragile enough to fall if left too long, but worth every second of patience. In the 1940s and 1950s, it was considered refined yet comforting, a touch of elegance on the family table. Children watched it rise like magic through the oven glass, gasping when it came out glowing and proud. Served beside turkey, ham, or roast beef, it offered a gentler kind of richness, one that felt like home dressed for company. Sweet corn soufflé was joy in motion, the fleeting kind of beauty that vanished soon after it was made. Light as air, golden as memory, and impossible not to love. Keeping the oven full all morning was one of Grandma's personal superpowers, a quiet display of coordination that could have impressed a professional chef without her ever claiming it as a skill. Long before the turkey was done, she was rotating casseroles, sliding in pies, warming rolls, and heating side dishes with a smooth confidence that made the entire kitchen feel like it ran on an invisible schedule. She knew exactly how long everything needed, exactly where each dish should go in the oven, and exactly when to switch things around so nothing burned or dried out. She never needed timers. She never needed reminders. She would tap the oven door, glance at the window, and somehow know the next step before anyone else even realized something was in there. And the oven never sat empty, not once, not for a single minute. The heat poured out every time she opened the door, warming the entire kitchen, fogging the windows and making the holiday feel like it had its own weather. Adults stayed out of her way, and kids watched like she was performing magic. It all looked effortless, but everyone knew it was not. The oven was the engine of Thanksgiving, and Grandma was the one who made sure it never slowed. By the time the meal was ready, every dish had been warmed, baked, toasted, or browned in exactly the right order. And even though she never said it out loud, everyone knew this orchestration was one of the reasons Thanksgiving tasted the way it did: perfect. Predictable? Comforting. Just the way Grandma always intended. Mock oyster soup was one of the Great Depression's most inventive creations, a meal that tasted luxurious without needing luxury. Families who couldn't afford fresh seafood found a way to mimic the flavor and texture of oysters using crumbled saltine crackers simmered in milk, butter, and onion broth. The crackers softened just enough to take on a silky bite, while the milk created a comforting, creamy base. A dash of Worcestershire sauce or celery salt gave it a faint sea aroma, enough to trick both the nose and the memory. Served with a sprinkle of pepper, it looked and felt like the real thing, warm, hearty, and homey. This dish symbolized the resilience of American cooks, especially women who refused to let scarcity steal dignity from the dinner table. It wasn't about imitation, it was about imagination. Mock oyster soup turned everyday ingredients into something that felt special, proving that even in hard times, hope could simmer quietly on the stove. Carrot pineapple cake with cream cheese frosting was the wholesome wonder that fooled everyone into thinking dessert could be good for you. Grated carrots gave it color and moisture, while crushed pineapple added natural sweetness. The batter smelled of cinnamon and brown sugar, homey and bright. Baked into golden layers, it was topped with thick cream cheese frosting that struck the perfect balance between tang and sweetness. The combination was magic, soft, spiced, and comforting in every bite. It became a 1970s favorite at potlucks and family holidays alike, bridging the gap between indulgence and nourishment. Walnuts or coconut might join the mix, giving texture and depth. Each slice felt generous, both in flavor and spirit. It was a cake that spoke to the times, practical, full of heart, and always shared. Today, carrot pineapple cake still carries that glow, a dessert that reminds us how kindness can taste like sugar and spice. Crispy brown and serve rolls brushed with butter were one of those small details Grandma understood better than anyone because she knew the simplest things could become special with the right touch. She opened the package hours before the meal, separating the rolls gently so they could breathe a little. The kitchen was already warm from everything else, but she always made room for those rolls, sliding them onto the middle rack with practiced ease while they baked. She melted butter on the stove until it turned glossy and fragrant. When the rolls came out golden and lightly crisp, she brushed them generously, each stroke adding a shine that made them look far fancier than they were. Kids always tried to sneak one, tugging at the corners while steam curled out, filling the room with warm bread. Grandma pretended to scold them, but she always smiled because she loved that something so simple brought so much excitement. The rolls were never dry, never forgotten, always soft in the middle and crisp on top. It was a small thing, but that small thing helped the whole meal feel complete. Grandma knew perfection lived in tiny touches, and those rolls were one of them. Celery stuffed with pimento cheese was once the opening act of Thanksgiving, a crunchy, creamy promise of good things to come. Long before appetizers became elaborate spreads, this simple treat graced every holiday table. The recipe was pure genius, crisp celery sticks filled with a tangy mixture of shredded cheddar, chopped pimentos, and just enough mayonnaise to hold it all together. The result was cool, sharp, and savory, a perfect balance of texture and flavor. Guests would hover near the relish tray, talking and laughing as they nibbled, the sound of clinking plates and distant roasting turkey filling the background. Housewives loved the simplicity. It could be made hours ahead, arranged neatly on platters, and served with pride. In Southern homes especially, pimento cheese was a point of identity, each family claiming their own version as best. The celery gave it structure, the cheese gave it heart. As food culture modernized, this quiet classic was replaced by charcuterie boards and fancier hors d'oeuvres. But there was a kind of honesty in it, fresh, handmade, and perfectly nostalgic. Celery stuffed with pimento cheese was more than a snack. It was hospitality itself, bite-sized and smiling. Chocolate rum pudding cups were the quiet indulgence of grown-up holidays. Instant chocolate pudding, rich and silky, met a splash of rum extract or, for the brave, the real thing. Topped with whipped cream and shaved chocolate, it felt elegant in its simplicity, proof that luxury could be spooned from a glass. These little desserts appeared at dinner parties and midnight gatherings, served in small cups that looked as stylish as they were easy. The flavor was smooth with just enough warmth to feel sophisticated, a step above childhood chocolate pudding, yet still comforting. In dimly lit rooms filled with laughter and record players humming, pudding cups became a moment of pause, soft, sweet, and quietly daring. They carried the flavor of the decade, modern, a little indulgent, but never complicated. Chocolate rum pudding cups reminded people that even in a fast-changing world, pleasure could be instant and timeless at once. Prune whip salad was a dessert that thought it was a side dish, a cloud of sweetness once found on polished glass tables at Christmas gatherings. The prunes were simmered until soft, pureed until smooth, and whipped into stiff egg whites with sugar until the mixture shone. Light as air and the color of cocoa, it chilled in the refrigerator until firm and ready to serve. A spoonful revealed its softness, trembling slightly before melting on the tongue. Its flavor was deep, dark, and sweet, caramel, fruit, and memory all at once. Some cooks added chopped walnuts for texture, others a crown of whipped cream for elegance. It looked like something from another time, more delicate than any pudding, more humble than any cake. On Christmas tables, it sat between salads and desserts, unsure where it belonged, but loved all the same. Prune whip salad was the taste of another generation, graceful, thrifty, and full of quiet joy, a whisper from the past that still deserves a place at the holiday feast. Using the good china without fear was one of those elegant traditions only Grandma could balance between formality and warmth. All year, the china stayed tucked behind a glass cabinet door, resting on velvet like fragile treasures. But on Thanksgiving, she opened that cabinet with confidence, believing special things were meant to be used. Each plate glowed under the dining room light, and she handled them with an ease that made everyone else relax. She never hovered or worried. To her, using the good china was a way of honoring family, making the day feel worthy of beauty. She laid each plate on fresh linens and paired them with polished silver, letting even the kids help carefully because she wanted them to learn the joy of holding something precious. Holidays, she believed, were for sharing, not protecting. And somehow, despite their age, the plates rarely chipped. That ritual made the meal feel grown up and timeless, something people remembered long after the food was gone. Eating from those plates felt like stepping into tradition. Scalloped oysters were the pride of seaside Thanksgivings, a dish layered with memory, comfort, and quiet elegance. Fresh oysters were shucked by hand, their salty liquor saved to moisten the layers of buttered cracker crumbs that surrounded them. Every layer glistened with cream, butter, and a touch of black pepper before being baked until the top turned golden and crisp. The aroma filled the house, rich, briny, and buttery all at once, like a meeting of the ocean and the hearth. In the 1800s and early 1900s, this dish symbolized refinement, served in silver dishes at hotels or in simple casseroles on coastal family tables. Each bite was a harmony of textures, the crunch of crumbs, the softness of oysters, and the silken warmth of cream. Inland families would sometimes make it with canned oysters, preserving the flavor even far from the shore. It was indulgence made accessible, a way for modest homes to taste luxury. Over time, as oysters grew expensive and palates shifted toward lighter fare, scalloped oysters slipped quietly from the holiday menu. Yet its spirit remains in old cookbooks, handwritten in fading ink beside notes like Papa's favorite. For those who remember, it was more than food. It was a celebration of place and tradition, a dish that carried the ocean to the table. Holiday pecan tassies were the jewels of every dessert table. Tiny, golden, and delicate, they looked like miniature pies kissed by sugar and tradition. The crusts were pressed into muffin tins by hand, filled with a glossy mixture of butter, brown sugar, and pecans that baked into caramel perfection. They cooled on wire racks, their fragrance filling kitchens with warmth that felt like December itself. Women brought them to bake sales, church suppers, and cookie swaps, where they disappeared before anyone could count how many they'd made. Each one held a perfect balance of crisp and chewy, rich enough to taste like indulgence, small enough to justify another. The tassies were made from the heart by hands that measured without spoons and baked with instinct. They represented the kind of craftsmanship that modern kitchens rarely see. The art of patience. For many, they were more than treats. They were holiday currency, traded and gifted with pride. Today, their memory lingers as a symbol of care, reminding us that sometimes the smallest desserts carry the biggest joy. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows was the kind of dish Grandma treated like a celebration all by itself, because it felt like dessert disguised as a side dish, and she knew everyone looked forward to it. The second they stepped through the door, she would boil the sweet potatoes until they were soft enough to mash, filling the kitchen with the warm, earthy scent that always signaled the holidays were finally here. She mixed them with butter, brown sugar, and cream until the mixture reached the exact level of smoothness she believed in. Never grainy, never stiff, always silky, with just enough sweetness to make the youngest kids hover around the stove. Then came the marshmallows, scattered generously across the top in uneven rows that somehow always melted into the perfect golden layer. When she slid the dish into the oven, the marshmallows puffed up and browned in spots, creating that familiar blend of crispy edges and gooey centers that made every bite feel like something special. The moment she set it on the table, conversations paused and eyes drifted toward it, because it carried that nostalgic magic that only Grandma could summon. It was festive, comforting, and completely unapologetic in its sweetness, the kind of dish that reminded everyone that Thanksgiving was not about strict rules or culinary trends, but about joy and tradition. Grandma did not care if it counted as a vegetable or a dessert. She cared that it brought the whole family together, even if only for a few seconds before forks hit plates. That casserole was her way of giving the day a little glow, a little warmth, a little softness, and it never disappointed. Brown bread. Steamed pudding was a taste of New England's heart, dense, dark, and fragrant with molasses. Made from cornmeal, whole wheat flour, and buttermilk, it was steamed slowly in coffee cans or cloth bags, filling homes with warmth and spice. Each serving was soft, slightly sticky, and comforting, best eaten with butter or a drizzle of cream. For families enduring long, cold evenings, it was both dessert and sustenance. Its humble ingredients reflected a time when nothing was wasted and sweetness came from patience, not sugar. The flavor was deep and homey, carrying notes of brown sugar and earth. Once a Thanksgiving staple across rural kitchens, it has nearly vanished from modern tables. But for those who remember, it represents endurance, the kind that fed both body and spirit when times were lean. Brown bread, steamed pudding was the quiet sweetness of gratitude itself. Hominy casserole was golden comfort baked into a dish that smelled like warmth and community. Cooked hominy, soft kernels of corn, was mixed with melted cheese, milk, and butter, then spread into a casserole dish and topped with breadcrumbs for that perfect crunch. When it baked, the top browned beautifully, crisp around the edges, while the inside turned creamy and rich. The scent of butter and corn filled the kitchen, mingling with the smell of coffee, pies, and conversation. It was mild, mellow, and deeply Southern, made for church potlucks, family gatherings, and winter suppers where food meant togetherness. Every scoop held the taste of home, soft and satisfying, with the kind of richness that didn't need dressing up. In the 1950s, dishes like this were passed around on long folding tables under buzzing lights, each one proudly homemade. You could almost hear the laughter echoing off the linoleum floors as plates clinked and stories passed hands. Hominy casserole wasn't fancy, but it didn't have to be. It was food that fed both body and spirit, warm, generous, and impossible to forget. Coconut pineapple snow pudding was light, tropical, and utterly 1970s. Whipped gelatin formed the base, giving it that signature jiggly texture beloved in the era of molded desserts. Pineapple added brightness, coconut added creaminess, and together they made a dessert that felt like a vacation in winter. Served in glass bowls or bundt molds, it shimmered under the holiday lights, cool and refreshing. Each spoonful melted instantly, leaving behind a hint of sweetness and fruit. It was easy to make, cheap to serve, and always admired for its airy beauty. Housewives took pride in its wobble, proof that it had set just right. At potlucks, it stood out among pies and cakes, a little tropical miracle on the buffet. Coconut pineapple snow pudding wasn't just dessert, it was nostalgia served chilled, light as laughter and sweet as memory. Which cheap Thanksgiving dish would you bring back to your table? Drop your favorite memory in the comments, hit like if these foods brought back childhood nostalgia, and subscribe for more forgotten holiday traditions.